Picture this. It's 1574 in the heart of Topkapi Palace. A new sultan has just taken the throne of the Ottoman Empire. His name? Murad III. He's 28 years old, young, inexperienced, and about to become one of the most controversial sultans in Ottoman history. Not because he was a great conqueror, not because he expanded the empire, but because he never left his palace. For 20 years, Murad III ruled the greatest empire on earth from inside the walls of his harem, surrounded by over 130 women, controlled by his mother, manipulated by his favorite wife. He fathered at least 103 children, at least 19 sons and 84 daughters. And when he died, possibly poisoned, his eldest son became sultan and murdered all 19 of his brothers in a single night. You already know that story. That was Mehmed III, the sultan who killed 19 brothers. But today, we're talking about the man who created him, the father who raised a monster, the sultan who lived in a golden cage and lost control of everything. Now, before we go further, let's talk about what a harem actually was. Because if you're imagining what Hollywood shows you, a bunch of women lounging around in silk, waiting for the sultan to pick them, you're completely wrong. The imperial harem was the most powerful, most exclusive, and most dangerous women's institution in the world. It was part royal household, part political headquarters, part training academy, part prison. Yes, it housed the sultan's concubines and wives, but it also housed his mother, the Valid Sultan, the most powerful woman in the empire, his sisters, his daughters, hundreds of servants, teachers, musicians, and the black eunuchs who guarded everything with absolute authority. This wasn't just a place for pleasure. This was where empires were built, where sultans were raised, where politics happened, where assassinations were planned. Women in the harem wielded incredible power through their sons, through their influence, through their networks. And for Murad III, the harem became his entire universe. He barely ever left it. Murad wasn't supposed to be sultan, not really. He was the eldest son of Sultan Selim II. You might know him as Selim the Drunk. Yeah. That Selim, the one who became sultan because his father, Suleiman the Magnificent, had killed his more capable brothers. Murad grew up watching his father rule, or rather, fail to rule. Selim was more interested in wine than warfare, more interested in the harem than governing. And Murad learned a lesson from this. If you want to survive as an Ottoman prince, keep your head down. Don't be too capable. Don't threaten anyone. Just exist. So that's what he did. When Selim died in 1574, allegedly from slipping in a bathhouse while drunk, though poison rumors persist, Murad became sultan almost by default. He was 28 years old, and he had no idea what he was doing. But Murad had one advantage: his mother. Nurbanu Sultan was possibly the most politically brilliant woman of her generation. Born in Venice, probably nobility, maybe even a princess, she was captured and enslaved as a young girl. She became Selim's favorite concubine, and when he became sultan, she became the Validi Sultan, the queen mother. And Nurbanu had no intention of letting her inexperienced son mess things up. For the first decade of Murad's reign, Nurbanu essentially ran the empire. She attended council meetings, unheard of for a woman. She corresponded with foreign rulers. She made decisions. Murad signed the papers. Nurbanu made the policies. And here's the thing, she was good at it. The empire was stable, wars were won, the economy functioned. But Murad, he was perfectly happy letting his mother rule, because he was busy with something else, the harem. Murad III holds a record that will probably never be broken. He had more children than any other Ottoman sultan in history. At least 103 children that we know of. 19 sons, 84 daughters, possibly more that weren't recorded. Think about that for a second. 103 children in 20 years. He didn't just have a harem, he lived in it. He rarely left it. State business, conducted from the harem. Military campaigns, he sent generals, stayed home. Diplomatic meetings, held in the palace, never outside. Historical accounts describe Murad as obsessed with his concubines. He would spend days, weeks in the harem, barely emerging for official duties. But here's where it gets complicated. Because this wasn't just about pleasure, this was also about control, or rather, loss of control. Among those 130-plus women, one stood out, Safiye Sultan. She was Albanian, beautiful, intelligent, and she had Murad completely under her spell. Safiye gave Murad his first son, the future Mehmed III, and from that moment on, she was untouchable. She became his Haseki Sultan, his chief consort. And unlike other favorites who would eventually be sidelined, Safiye held on to her power for Murad's entire reign. How? By being irreplaceable. While Murad was sleeping with dozens of other women, Safiye was the one he trusted, the one he confided in, the one who influenced his decisions. She controlled access to him. She decided who got to see the Sultan and who didn't. She manipulated appointments. She built alliances. And here's the kicker. She didn't even like that Murad had so many other women. Historical records mention constant fights between them, jealousy, drama, power struggles. But Safiye always won, because Murad couldn't function without her. A sultan with 130 women, completely dominated by one. While Murad was busy in the harem, the empire was falling apart. Not catastrophically, not overnight, but slowly, steadily. Corruption spread. Provincial governors stopped listening to Istanbul. The military became undisciplined. Economic problems mounted. And Murad? He didn't seem to care, or maybe he did care but felt powerless to stop it. His mother Nurbanu died in 1583, and with her gone, there was nobody competent running things anymore. Safiye tried, but she was more interested in personal power than good governance. Foreign ambassadors wrote home describing Murad as weak, pleasure-seeking, controlled by women. The great Ottoman Empire, the terror of Europe, the conqueror of 3 continents, was being ruled by a man who rarely left his bedroom. Remember those 19 sons? Murad barely knew them. In the Ottoman system, princes were supposed to be sent to provinces as governors to gain experience, learn how to rule, lead armies, make decisions. But Murad was paranoid, probably because he'd seen what happened to princes, who got too powerful. His own grandfather Suleiman had killed his uncle Mustafa. So Murad kept his sons in the palace, not as governors, as prisoners. This was the beginning of the kafes system, the cage. Princes locked in luxurious apartments within the palace, forbidden to leave, forbidden to govern, forbidden to have real lives. Just waiting. Waiting to either become sultan or be executed. Can you imagine growing up like that? 19 boys, locked in golden cages, watching their father surround himself with women and wine while the empire crumbled. Is it any wonder that when Mehmed III finally became sultan, he was paranoid, ruthless, broken? Murad didn't just fail to prepare his heir, he created a monster. January 16th, 1595. Murad III died suddenly. He was only 49 years old. Official cause of death? A stroke, or maybe a heart attack, something natural. But whispers spread through the palace. Poison. Was it Safiye securing her son's succession? Was it rivals? Was it just his body giving up after years of excess? We'll never know. What we do know is that Murad's death triggered the worst succession massacre in Ottoman history. His son Mehmed III, the prince who'd spent his entire life locked in the palace, watching his father's weakness, ordered the execution of all 19 of his brothers. 19 princes, strangled with silk cords, in a single night. You know that story. You've heard those screams. You've seen those 19 coffins. But now you know where it came from. Mehmed didn't just kill his brothers because of tradition or politics. He killed them because his father had raised him in a cage. Because Murad had taught him that survival meant ruthlessness. That family meant nothing. That power was the only thing that mattered. Murad III created the conditions for that massacre. He just didn't live to see it. So, what do we make of Murad III? Was he a weak sultan who failed his empire? Absolutely. Was he a victim of circumstance? A man born into a system that rewarded paranoia and punished competence? Maybe. Was he a product of his father's failures, just as Mehmed was a product of his? Probably. Here's the thing about the Ottoman succession system. It didn't just kill princes, it destroyed the survivors too. Murad survived by being weak, by not threatening anyone, by hiding in his harem and letting stronger people make decisions. And that survival strategy worked until it didn't. Because when you teach your sons that power comes from fear, when you lock them in cages and give them no preparation for rule, when you show them that family is expendable and pleasure is all that matters, you create monsters. Mehmed III was a monster, but Murad III created him. Today, Murad III is mostly forgotten, overshadowed by his father Selim, his grandfather Suleiman, and even his son Mehmed. History remembers him, if it remembers him at all, as the sultan with too many women, the weak ruler, the man who hid in his palace while the empire crumbled. But maybe that's too simple. Maybe Murad was also a victim, a man trapped in a system that gave him impossible choices. Be strong and risk assassination. Be weak and watch everything fall apart. He chose weakness. And 103 children paid the price. 19 of them with their lives. The Ottoman Empire survived Murad III, but it never quite recovered from what his reign represented, the beginning of the end of the great age of sultans. After Murad, no Ottoman sultan would ever be truly magnificent again. If this story made you think about power, weakness, and the cycles of violence that destroy families and empires, hit that like button. Because history isn't just about the great conquerors, it's also about the weak rulers, the ones who failed, the ones who created the conditions for tragedy. And Murad III's story is just one chapter in the long, bloody saga of the Ottoman dynasty. We're digging through all of it, the victories, the failures, the tragedies you never learned in school. So if you want more stories about the real people behind the empire, the ones who shaped history through their weakness as much as their strength, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Drop a comment. Was Murad III a victim or a failure? Could he have done anything differently? What would you have done in his position? Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous rulers aren't the cruel ones. They're the weak ones who let cruelty flourish because they're too afraid to stop it.